This video covers multiplying positive and negative numbers. There's a couple important rules you must know before we get started. The first is that the product of two numbers with the same sign is always positive. For example, when you have 5 times 2, where both numbers are positive, you get 10. You've seen multiplication like this before. When you have negative 6 times negative 3, where both numbers are negative, these become positive, so negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. Our next rule says that the product of two numbers with different signs is negative. The first example, we have 3 times negative 4. You do 3 times 4, which is 12, and because one of the numbers is negative and the other is positive, then we know that it's going to be negative, because our rule says the product of two numbers with different signs will be negative. For our second example, our negative number is first, but we do the same thing. 2 times 6 is 12, and the negative sign on just one number, and the other one's positive, means that our answer will be negative. What about multiplying multiple numbers? So when you have multiple numbers, like this example here, you look at one piece first. We can do our multiplication from left to right, just like PEMDAS indicates. So 2 times negative 3 would be 6, and since there are two numbers with different signs, it's going to be negative. It's negative 6 multiplied by 4. Negative 6 times 4 is equal to 24, and since we again have two signs or two numbers with different signs, we know this is going to be negative. In our next example, we're going to again go left to right. We have negative 1 times negative 2, which is 2, and since both of them are negative, we know it's going to be positive 2. So two numbers with the same sign is positive. Then we're going to multiply this by 5, which is here. 2 times 5 is 10, so your answer is positive 10. Just like addition, multiplication has some important properties that you should know. In fact, many of these properties have the same name, only they're slightly different because we're using products and multiplication this time instead of addition and sums. Our first property says the order in which you multiply two numbers does not change the product. And this is called the commutative property. So in variables, that means a times b is the same as saying b times a. Let's test this out using numbers. We'll say a is equal to 1 and b is equal to 2. So we're going to say a times b, which is 1 multiplied by 2, is equal to b times a, which is 2 multiplied by 1. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is also 2. So we know that that works. Next, we have the associative property of multiplication. This says the way that you group three numbers in a product does not change the product. So we have a times b grouped together, multiplied by c, and then we have a times the grouping of b times c. So all we've done is change the grouping a little bit in this expression. Let's again test this one with numbers. We'll say a equals 1, b equals 2, and c is equal to 3. You could choose any numbers to test this. So our first part, a multiplied by b would be 1 multiplied by 2. Multiply the whole thing by c. C is going to be 3. Then we have a on the outside multiplied by b times c on the inside. So a on the outside is 1 multiplied by b times c, which is 2 times 3 on the inside of the parentheses. We still have to make sure to follow PEMDAS when we're solving these. So first we're going to do what's in parentheses. So on the left side we have 2 times 1, which is 2, multiplied by 3, which equals 1 on the outside, and 2 times 3, which is 6. Solving down one more time, we have 2 times 3, which gives you 6, equals 1 times 6, which is 6. 6 equals 6, so that one's also correct. Our next property is the identity property for multiplication. This says that the product of a number and 1 is the number. This time, let's give a value of 5. So if we do 5 multiplied by 1 equals 1 multiplied by 5 equals 5, we can test it out. So 5 times 1 is 5, which equals 1 times 5, which is also 5, so this is just showing that you can do them in either order, which is the commutative property, and that's equal to 5. All of these 5s are equal to each other, so we know that the identity property is also true. And our last property is the property of 0, which says the product of a number and 0 is 0. So if we keep a is equal to 5, we can do 5 times 0 equals 0 times 5, which equals 0. 5 times 0 is 0, which equals 0 times 5, which is 0, which equals 0. And we know this is correct as well. Now pause the video and practice these problems by yourself. Now check your answers with me. So 2 times 3 is the kind of multiplication you're used to doing, which is 6, and that's the correct answer. 7 times negative 2 is 14, and since you have a positive for your first number and a negative for your second number, that means you're going to have a negative number, so the answer is negative 14. For our next example, we have negative 6 times 4, which is 24, if we go left to right, and that stays negative because one of those was negative and one was positive. But we still have to multiply this by negative 2. 24 times 2 is equal to 48, and we have a negative and another negative, so two signs that are the same will give you a positive, so this is positive 48.